Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, aging. My guest is Dr. Geoffrey Mount Varner, a board-certified emergency medicine physician with over 25 years of clinical practice. Dr. Mount Varner is a national healthcare leader who has authored several best-selling books and speaks nationally and internationally on healthcare matters. He is on the faculty of Howard University, and having served as the chief of a Level 1 trauma center in Washington, D.C., he is an expert on split-second decision-making. He joins me today to discuss, among a variety of enlightening topics, the importance of mindset and, of course, aging well. Dr. Geoffrey, welcome to the Aging Well podcast. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and some of your background.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. First of all, thank you very much for your multiple podcasts as well. But by trade, I'm a board-certified emergency medicine doctor who somewhat practices full-time. I do a little less now. I grew up in Maryland, did my undergraduate at Hampton, my master's at Harvard, medical school at Wayne State, and did my internship at George Washington and residency at Howard. And I am fully embracing what comes along with getting older. And Jeff, I think that both you and I can both reasonably say that at 25, our thoughts about getting older are completely different than they are once you start to get older. And I love in your show how you always talk about you don't talk about old as a destination. You talk about it as a growth process. I think that's the best way to go about it.
That's great. Now, you've written a few books, I understand. Tell us about these.
So I've written about 4 or 5 books. The two that I'm most proud of is one is called, one of them is Train Your Mind for Split-Second Decisions. And basically it's about decision-making. Look at it this way. We all make about 35,000 decisions every single day, from what to wear, what to eat, what to drink. Most of them are mundane and don't even matter. But about 1 to 2% of those are life-changing and life-altering. And those are split-second decisions. So in other words, if you learn to focus on those split-second decisions, your decision-making IQ gets much higher and your other basic decisions become a little more easier. And so at the risk of going on for like too long, let me just say this. One of the biggest factors that people confuse about decision-making is that they think that every decision has to be right. Now, Jeff, you and I both know that no one here is God, so no one gets everything right. And so what we should focus on is getting the most out of our decision, and most importantly, be prepared for the next one. In other words, if your decision doesn't give you the results you want, you've got to be prepared to make that next decision. And where people go wrong is their decision doesn't get them what they want, and they get paralyzed. Oh, I made a bad decision. What do I do? So they forget that, hey, you made a bad decision, but that's not the time to lick your wounds. Be prepared to make the next one. Every decision gets us to the next decision.
I'm going to kind of skip my script a little bit here for a second. One of the questions I really like asking people is, if you can go back in time and change one thing, what would you change in your life? And based on your understanding of the split-second decisions that we make and how we can alter what's going forward, how do you kind of approach that question?
That's a good question. I would have been less harsh on myself when I made a decision and it didn't go my way. I think I got caught up in the whole Rocky era where, you would fight through stuff and be hard on yourself. And what I've learned as I've gotten older is that the most important thing to do is to be gentle with yourself. is to be kind with yourself. And I don't mean that from a fleshly point of view, but we're often kind to our kids. We're often kind to everybody else. But you forget to be kind to yourself. And sometimes just learn to laugh at yourself. Like, hey, I got that one wrong.
Yeah.
But everything is going to be okay. So that's what I would do. I would be gentler with myself.
It's a good response. My response is generally I wouldn't change anything, because even those mistakes that I've made in those split-second decisions has led me to where I am now. And, you just feel like you make that different split-second decision, it's going to dramatically change your trajectory. And we can't go back in the past and change any of those decisions that we've made, but we do have the capacity in the moment to make a better decision now that's going to lead me forward. And so that's how I've always kind of responded to that.
And that's an excellent response. In fact, I've taught something similar where when I ask people that question, the first question I ask, and that's this: are you happy with your life? Everyone's going to say yes. And then once they say yes, it goes back to your rationale. If you're happy with your life, if you go back and change anything, then your life may not be what it is. And so therefore, there's no need to really go back and change anything. You can learn lessons from it, but there's no need to go back and change anything.
I'd say even if you're not happy with your life, I mean, you've gotten to the point where you're at because of the things that you've done. If you're not happy with your life, well, it's the decision you make now that's going to make you happy tomorrow, not the decision that you made 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Oh, that was good. Go ahead, Jeff. I will even add on to this. And for those people who are insecure and scared, it's going to throw them off because you're not allowed to be a victim once I say this. And that is, you can decide to be happy now. Being happy is a decision because it's a state of mind. It's not about what you have. It's not about what you don't have. It's about you waking up, deciding that I'm going to be happy. And happiness, it is a state of mind. It's a habit. And so if you wake up every day, believe it or not, for about 3 to 4 weeks and say, I'm going to be happy, decide to be happy, and feel it, you're eventually going to be happier within about 40 days.
Sounds good. We talk often about gratitude with 2 T's instead of just the 1 T. So it's your attitude of gratitude.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah.
Attitude and mindset are everything.
Yeah.
Attitude and mindset. Let me throw this at you. And I know you're the host, but let me ask your thoughts about this. And that is, you've lived a happy life, and I don't know whether your audience can see you or they've seen you. You're in great shape, and so what that says is it's a lot about your attitude and mind about life. Are you of the belief that there are really no victims in life? Meaning that, by and large, I'm not talking about from earthquakes and that kind of stuff. I'm just talking about day-to-day things, meaning that it's your mindset and your thought process about things that determines your day, that determines your life, that it's really about you, your mind, and your thought versus anything else external?
Absolutely. I really think that, we're here for a purpose. And when I talk purpose, I usually capitalize that, that greater universal purpose. And we can't accomplish the things that we are intended to do without the circumstances that bring us to the point to be able to do that. And it does suck for some people that they are born into certain situations that give them maybe lesser opportunities, but it's still an opportunity to overcome that and to do something with it that's going to inspire and direct other people. And so, yeah, I would say that there are really no victims, that the victim mindset is something that we impose upon ourselves. I know it's a little bit harder especially in this generation. Again, people can't see me. I'm a bald white male in my 60s. Many would consider me to be privileged, and I would agree with that. So I might have had, different circumstances that others might have had, but still those opportunities that we get, whether good or bad, direct us and help us to evolve into the person we're supposed to be. And so when we are willing to call ourselves a victim, we rob ourselves of that opportunity to really look at what is our purpose here, if that makes any sense.
That makes great sense. And I love how you broke down how you see it. And believe it or not, I am in line with you, except I want to distinguish that there's the carnal you, which is the world and how you experience the world. And I think that world may be considered very unfair, and there are some people who are privileged. But then there's the spiritual world. And in that spiritual world, and that's why I said that there are no victims. In that spiritual world, I believe that we all come from the same source energy, the same God. And in that spiritual world, things are fair, things are real. And if you can connect to that spiritual world, it translates to that carnal world. And while you may be a white guy with like privilege, there are some other non-white people who don't have full privilege, but yet they have gone far beyond where you could see yourself or where I could see myself. Oh, by the way, everyone, I am a black guy for those people who like cannot see me. But if you connect to that spiritual world, it's unlimited. The world is yours. Color doesn't matter. Money doesn't matter because you manifest everything that you think. Yes, I know I went off on a real tangent there.
No, that's an awesome tangent. I mean, this to me, part of aging well is, tapping into what I call well-centered fitness, which is your spiritual, physical, intellectual, emotional, and social well-beings. And I really think that the spiritual and physical are that real foundation, that how we treat ourselves physically and how we treat ourselves spiritually, and spiritual being that connection with the universe. And we are all interconnected. I mean, you can get down to the quantum physics of how we are all, is we breathe out. Now, in this interview, we're doing it remotely. So, the oxygen that I'm breathing out, or CO2 I'm breathing out, isn't interacting with you. But quite likely, as it travels across the country from, here to Maryland, it's interacting with multiple people. So we are one, and all of that connects us together. Every action that I take or reaction that I take is ultimately going to have some impact, maybe not directly to you or somebody else, but, we're all connected in ways that, our physical and spiritual cannot be totally separated. And I think as we look at that spiritual and physical being connected, then that kind of builds on intellectually, how are we responding to that? How are we developing that? Leads on to how we emotionally interact with our communities and with our families, our friends, even treat ourselves, as you were talking earlier about, being hard on yourself or not hard on yourself. And then ultimately, it's going to come to the pinnacle of how we relate socially and how we relate with each other. And so I'm very much a spiritual person, and I don't kind of lump spiritual with just religion, because I think a lot of people, they think, oh, you're a spiritual person, you go to church every Sunday or you go to the synagogue on Saturday. And it's like, no, that's not making you a spiritual person. A spiritual person is you transcend religion. Your God is bigger than what you perceive him to be or her to be. And that understanding of how we are one, how we interact, how we are all part of the universe really drives how we function successfully in life. I know we really went off on a tangent there.
No, actually, this is not a tangent. This is really about getting older. And I would bet you that, and I don't want to speak for you, and you tell me if I'm wrong, you probably didn't have that same mindset when you were 25.
Absolutely not. I mean,
yeah, so that's why this is right in line with what we're talking, because some of this has come, because I'm 56. Some of this has come with just getting older. You notice how I drew the distinction between carnal world and spiritual world, because often at my level, which God has blessed me with a high level of function, and what I did not tell you is that, so my mom, she's a PhD, and my dad was a businessman, but my mom raised 2 judges and a doctor. And of my nieces and nephews, 3 of them are in medical school. My daughter's about to go to medical school. So when I say stuff, people say, but you're privileged. Well, so I always have to draw a line between the carnal world and spiritual world. I'm privileged from a spiritual point of view. In the carnal world, the world is going to be the world. It's your thought and mindset about and how you respond to. The biggest thing I've had difficulty teaching my kids are, and I'm still struggling with at times. The world can say anything you want, anything they want to you. It's their right. The world can. But the part you can control is how you respond to. I mean, you don't have to respond at all. It's your mental thoughts about it. You can internalize and say it's true, or you can pay nothing, or you can pay no attention to it. It's about developing the mindset about how you want to see the world and how you want to respond to the world. You don't let the world control you, because what are there is as within, so without. So the more you settle with you are within, the more the world is going to be settled on the outside.
It's a great philosophy.
Yeah, hey, we're all just trying to make it.
Yeah. So, other books. What other books have you written?
So the other book was called Home Alive: 11 Must Steps for Surviving Encounters with the Police. And by the way, I need to it was first edition and the second edition. Both of them were international bestsellers. The first one came out in 2017, well before George Floyd. People say, well, how'd you know to write it? And the book is simply about how to interact with the police and make it home alive. So let me, and it's not about being right, none of that. So like, let me set it up. I think I mentioned earlier, both my sisters are judges. And as a result of being an ER doctor, I interact with the police a whole lot. In fact, I was a medical director for them in Washington, D.C. Combined with both of my sisters being judges, the police would meet with me about my book because they knew I wasn't trying to set them up. So I was able to get honest feedback. Now, this book came about 11 different steps about when stopped by the police. These are the steps you want to take. And mind you, I got 50% of police officers loved it, 50% of them hated it. 50% of families loved it, 50% of families hated it. And here's why. My basic premise of this book was, I don't care what an officer says to you. I don't care how they make you feel. Your goal is to get home alive. Your first goal is to make that officer feel safe. And that usually throws people off. Wait a minute, he's the officer. He or she is the one with the gun. Why do I have to make them feel safe? Because he or she is the one with the gun. And so you've got to make them feel so safe that them using their gun doesn't even come into their mind. And again, if they talk to you a certain way, if they make you feel bad in a certain way, if they call you different stuff, that's not your goal to deal with it. That's not your job to deal with it right then. Your job is to make it home alive. And by the way, I've got a son and a daughter and several nieces and nephews. So this is very passionate to me. Get home and we can deal with anything that happens. But if you're dead or hurt on the side of that road, then we lost you. And so that was the spirit of that book. And by the way, to your question about, this is tied to your question about 25 years ago. So since I was 14 years old, guess what I always wanted to be? A police officer. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you. If they came to me now at 56 and said, hey, we'll put you through a 6-week training, you get to be a police officer for a year, that's what I would do for a year.
Yeah, I don't know that I ever wanted to be a police officer. I had an uncle who was a police officer for many, many years. Number of years ago, I was in a bookstore and I was looking for a book. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with Dennis Byrd, played for the New York Jets a number of years ago. I think it's probably almost 20 years ago now. Was paralyzed. And the book is about kind of his story of kind of going from that spinal injury to actually being able to walk and run again. But in the middle of that book, there's a chapter on his college roommate, Gus Spanos. And as I'm flipping through the book, I see this picture and I know that guy. I went to high school with him. So his roommate in college was a freshman my senior year. He wrestled heavyweight for my high school, went on, played football at the University of Tulsa, became a state trooper in Oklahoma, and on a routine traffic stop, walked up to the car and was shot and died in the hospital. And so the whole chapter was kind of about that. But part of it that kind of, that's really kind of cool. This book, honors somebody that I went to high school with and, honors Gus's story because it was a really tragic story. But, it didn't matter who was the person behind the gun. I don't even know the story behind it. But, any history of the person who shot him. I just know that, he was shot doing his job. And that's in my mind, anytime I'm pulled over, that, the cop doesn't care if I'm black or white. They just want to know that they're safe walking up to that car. And I go through probably some of the things that you talk about in the book. If an officer pulls me over, which I hope is very rare, I pull the car over, I turn the radio off, put my hands up on the steering wheel, and I don't move until he gets in the car or until he gets to the car. And it's, my wallet is in my pocket, or, my registration is in the glove box. May I get it? And, it's, to me, very important to make that officer feel as comfortable as possible walking up to the car. And a lot of people don't understand that, and it doesn't end pretty for them. And for some of us, it might just be we get a ticket when we could have gotten off with a warning. For others, like Floyd, it did not end pretty. And so I got to read your book.
I think that Floyd was a complete outlier.
Yeah.
Outlier in terms of, I've never seen a cop just behave in that way. But the typical, so the frame is the stops that we're talking about, the typical ones. You're right. You've got to make the officer feel safe. And my mom has taught all of us this. And again, it doesn't make people feel comfortable, but it is what it is. She says, respond to the world the way it is versus how it should be, while working on developing a world of how it should be. In other words, when you get pulled over, the world is the world. And then that is the world, the officer can kill you. So make that officer feel safe and deal with your feelings about it later. Because we know there's still, I still dabble in this. This year, we have experienced about 1.1 citizens being killed by an officer each day. We are on track to have more people killed by the police than ever in history in 1 year. The point of me saying that is, hey, it's still important for us to be safe and to teach our kids to be safe as well. And those include young ladies as well. This newest study showing that the fastest number of age group, or the fastest population that are being injured by the police, are young women as well. So part of our goal is to make this world a better, safer place.
And you can't do it if you're not alive.
Oh, yeah. Do you mind if I pivot to something that, like you mentioned earlier about the mindset? And that's exercise. And I say this to people who are getting older. Doesn't matter what your weight is. Doesn't matter whether or not you exercise now. I can tell you this, Jeff, being an ER doctor for 25 years and dealing with people from the gamut of illnesses, I consistently notice whatever ailment you have, the better shape you're in, you're going to have a better outcome. Obviously, if it's a gunshot to the chest or something, your chances are what they are, no matter what shape you're in. But the better shape you're in, better likelihood you're going to have an outcome. That's from the physical point of view. I'm going to switch back to the spiritual point of view. And I've learned this in the ER. There have been a number of people who've come to me ER who should have died, and they did not. The number of people who should not have died, and they did. And modern science cannot explain it. And I say it to say is that part of it is that I've noticed is that it's about your belief system. It's about belief. And I'm really talking about those people with chronic sicknesses. Those people who had a belief, a true intent of belief that things were going to be okay, had better outcomes. They had better outcomes. Those people who the chronic ones who are always worried, this is not going to work out, what am I going to do? Their outcomes were not as good. And so I think that what I'm talking about again is your spirit. Always keeping an encouraging, positive spirit helps in every aspect of your life.
I think it goes back to, again, that spiritual and physical components, or what you say, the spiritual and the carnal. Your approaches to your health and your well-being, both of those components are going to have an impact on your outcome. And I teach a pathophysiology and exercise class, and I always tell my students the basic foundations of this course are: if you want to live longer and be healthier, don't smoke, exercise, get regular physical activity, and eat a healthy diet and get plenty of sleep. And that will take care of much of that. I don't dive into as much the spiritual side of it, but I think also, having a more optimistic, a more gratitude approach to life, and that's going to have an impact as well. In your experience kind of in the ER, especially like during COVID, what experience did you have in terms of people's outcomes relative to like the COVID experience when we're looking at both the physical side and the spiritual side?
Wow. The COVID experience it changed my life. And then let me set it up this way. So prior to COVID, I'm following on this one. Prior to COVID, a few years prior to that, I was in charge of the emergency Ebola response for Washington, D.C. The reason I highlight that is because it gave me a platform. So when COVID hit, I was in the ER back on the front lines, but I was called to do many interviews as well because they knew me from my Ebola. But so it forced me to stay on top of the Ebola literature, research in terms of supplements. And let me get to your question. What I found about COVID was those people who believed that they were going to be okay often were okay, often did fine. However, your belief needed to be stronger if you start off with certain ailments. One thing we did learn about COVID is that if you were morbidly obese, your outcomes were a lot worse. If you were morbidly obese, your outcomes were a lot worse. And two, what we learned about COVID is that if you start off with vitamin D deficiency, no matter what color you were, your outcomes were a lot worse. In other words, in Italy during the height of it, 97% of those who were in the ICU were either morbidly obese or vitamin D deficiency. And so COVID taught us a lot. It taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about immunity to the point, Jeff, that sort of COVID, I went on and created a whole Shield Vitamins immunity line, a whole Shield Vitamin immunity line. So prior to COVID, I was not in the immunity supplements line, but because of my reading from my interviews, what I learned that there are certain supplements, vitamin D, vitamin Z, zinc, propolis, elderberry, and echinacea, even prior to COVID, there is evidence that they help with viral infections. And so COVID taught me a lot about while you want to be spiritually healthy, and that's true. You want to be physically healthy, and that's true. But you have to make sure that your immunity is maximized. Because without immunity, none of us are going to be here. And so COVID did two things for me. It taught me a lot about people, and then it caused me to look within a lot. Because a lot of people were coming to the ER, Jeff, not necessarily for like medical reasons. They were coming to me, and they just wanted me to tell them, hey, everything's going to be okay. And as an ER doctor, it took me a second to realize, oh, they want my spiritual health. They just want me to say, hey, patient, especially the older people, everything's going to be okay, regardless if their COVID test was positive or negative. Just those words alone, about 60% of them, I think, had a profound impact.
That's fascinating. And we'll make sure we link in our description notes to where somebody can access, and we'll talk about that at the end of the podcast, where they can link to, finding your supplements.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So is there anything else that in your years of experience as an ER physician that you've learned that might help our listeners to age well? Anything that we haven't talked about yet? I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging.
Yeah, so I did this experiment. I did my own experiment about the last 15 years. I would ask my patients who were terminally ill, and they knew they were like terminally ill, and those who knew, and those who were older. I defined older as 85 and older who were still with it. I would ask them this one question: hey, what advice would you give to me if I were 25 years old? I'll consistently ask that. And believe it or not, when you're terminal and when you're older, I believe they have such great insight. The one inconsistent answer I got was they said, I would work less and spend more time with family and friends. Do you hear me? These were people from all walks of life. that was a consistent. I would work less and spend more time with family and friends. I highlight that because many of us spend so much time trying to make it to that next level that we miss life. And so I don't know about you, but I've noticed as I've gotten older, there are fewer friends that I allow into my world. And so I've learned to spend more time with my old friends. I've learned to consciously spend time with them because as I get older, believe it or not, they mean more to me. And, oh, this is a big, and because I trust them, there are times I need advice. And how about you? As I've gotten older and a little wiser, nobody's able to advise me. My friends, I'll listen to them and they can offer me wise counsel. So always having people who can give you wise counsel as you get older is absolutely key.
Perfect advice.
I don't know about you, but maybe it's me. Do you allow newer friends into your life at this age?
Not really. I'm finding it a lot harder to make those deeper relationships as you get older. You find people a lot more superficial as you interact with them. But your old friends are tried and true. And I've moved around quite a bit. I'm originally from Pittsburgh, and so we're out in Oregon now. I've lived in Michigan. You mentioned you went to Wayne State University. I was at Eastern Michigan the first part of my academic career teaching. And so I've been around. I got friends that are really all over the globe now. And there are some of them that I have not seen maybe physically in 20 years. But if I were to reach out to them today for advice or help, they'd be right on it. And so I know which of those relationships are the deepest, most secure relationships, the ones that I can trust for help. And those are the people I'm going to go to. And it is a lot harder to kind of open yourself up to kind of newer relationships because you're a little less trusting and a little bit more wise in terms of what does this person have to really offer to me spiritually as well as physically. That makes sense.
Yes. Someone like you who's in great shape. So we're like attracts like. That's throughout life. So when you're in great shape, any new friends probably have to have some kind of workouts just to fit into your space. So it limits the number of new friends as you get older, 50, 60 years old, who have a true regular workout ethic. And I just highlighted that again, everyone just say, I think that working out adds so much to you physically, from a health perspective and from a spiritual point of view. It's another dimension of your life. And I just want to pivot back to something that you said in your pathophysiology course. Yes. So one of the new measures of success is how much sleep you get, believe it or not. It's not just finances. Those people who can sleep 8 hours a night, that's a measure of success. Because what it says that you have a job such that you can you can sleep 8 hours. Not only that, your life is not so stressful that you're not able to sleep 8 hours. Meaning that just the fact you can sleep 8 hours is a level of success that people should take as, hey, I've achieved something. Just the fact that you can still sleep 8 hours. When I know I was 30, I couldn't afford to sleep 8.
Yeah. So do you have a bedtime?
I do, actually. I like to be in bed by 10, at the very latest 10:30. Up until last year, I like to get up at about 4 or 4:30. Found that it switched to about 5 or 5:30.
Yeah, I'm an hour earlier than you. I go to bed about 9:30, and I try and get up by about 4:30. Sometimes it's a little bit harder to get up at 4:30, and for a while it was starting to creep up closer to 5. But that's when I have to work out in the morning, and I work out at home because I'm very antisocial with my workouts. I just want to get in there. I don't want to be bothered by anybody. I just want to work out. So I have it set up in my garage. Yeah, I can do everything that I want to do, and I got to get done so that my wife can do her workouts. And so I have to be very regimented in terms of getting to bed, getting up at a specific time. But we just got back a week ago from Ireland, Scotland. And so being 8 hours ahead for a while has made it a lot easier to get up now at 4:30 in the morning. In fact, I'm getting up without the alarm, and I'm hoping I can kind of maintain that. But yeah, I'm big on a bedtime. Corbin, my co-host, who couldn't be with us today, he always jokes that, about my bedtime and, brings it up regularly kind of on the podcast. But I am very much about regular sleep. And I think that's very important.
You're a wise man, because if you look at the top 100 CEOs, one of the things that they talk about is going to bed early and getting up early. And the second thing that they do in the morning, besides working out, because most of them work out, is meditation.
Mm-hmm.
So part of my regimen of getting up early is I have my cup of coffee, and then I do my meditation. Then I do my reading, and then I do my meditation, and then I do my workouts. And similar to you, I'm kind of antisocial. Prior to COVID, I used to go to a gym every so often. But then after COVID, I went to a gym and I had to wait. Maybe I only had to wait a minute for the event. But I was annoyed because I've gotten used to working out at home. So now all my workouts are 100% at home. All my runs start from my house. So I never have to rely or wait for anyone. So you and I are very much aligned. I'm just very selfish about my workouts, and I don't like to be interrupted either.
Yeah, that's how I am. And I've had years. I worked as a personal trainer for years before I went on to get my PhD, and you got used to correcting people's form and technique because that was your job. And now, if I go to a gym, I'm looking at all these people doing, you see some of these things in these crazy videos, and that's what you see at the gym. And it's like, I can't do that. I can't sit there and try and exercise and see somebody doing something wrong. I want to go over and say, can I show you a better way to do that exercise? And so it helps me just to stay home and exercise to myself. I don't have to worry about, is my partner going to show up? Do I need a spotter? Do I need any of that? I just do it and I'm done.
So first of all, let me apologize. I do my research pretty well. I didn't see that you had a PhD, Dr. Armstrong. Congratulations. First of all, what's it in?
It's in exercise physiology.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's exercise physiology and a minor in anatomy.
Wow. So you are a social scientist. So forgive me for not calling you Dr. Armstrong. I did not know. And just as a side note, from someone who was in academia, who was an academic medicine for like 20 years, what a lot of people do not know is that of all the degrees there are, in terms of difficulty to achieve, it's the PhD. It's not the JD, it's not the MD, it's not the EDD. Dr. Armstrong will uniquely understand this. Because when you go to medical school, you do steps A, B, C, and D, you are a doctor. It's that simple. PhD is different. Steps A and B are kind of set up for you, but C and D become very, very difficult. It's the original research, then it's the politics, and there's a lot of politics at the PhD levels. And a lot of people do not realize is that the PhDs are the ones who teach the MDs. So let me commend you, Dr. Armstrong, because you took of all the pathways, you took a very, very difficult one. So let me just commend you for that. And forgive me for not calling you Dr.
Oh, that's fine. Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I always kind of joke that, when you get your bachelor's degree, it's bullshit. When you get your master's degree, it's more shit. And when you get your PhD, it's just piled higher and deeper, and you can see people that have a PhD learn more and more about less and less until they know everything about absolutely nothing. And so I appreciate your perspective on it.
Because it's funny because my mom has her PhD, but my daughter is interested in MD PhD program. And I told her just from a fairly ego point of view, I said, if you get an MD PhD, you're like it. Yeah. Because it's the PhDs who, you don't realize PhDs are at the top. MDs are just below like PhDs for those people who know anything about academia. But to have both of them, you're the top. And then MD PhD programs are 6 years. She doesn't understand it yet, but you feel like you get this PhD programs alone. They likely you were finished in 5 to 6 years. But how many people do you know it took them 10 years? It's not unusual for that to happen. So the MD PhD, I think, is an easy route because you're guaranteed to be done with both in 6 years. So I think that is probably the best game in town that people don't recognize is that route there.
Absolutely. I had kind of in the past never thought I could have gone to med school. And so I kind of went more of an engineering route and everything else. And it wasn't until I got into, the later part of my undergrad that I realized I had this passion for exercise physiology and got my degree in that and developed a passion for anatomy and ultimately went back and got the PhD. But trying to think where I'm going here with this, but I never thought I could do the medical part of it. And part of it is I'm fine with dissecting, and I've prosected more cadavers than I want to remember, but I always feel like maybe a pathology side of it would have been the route for me, being a medical examiner or something like that, because I like exploring, trying to solve these problems and things like that. But trying to make the decisions like you make as an ER doctor, where you got to make those split-second decisions that are life or death, it's like, no, that's not really for me. I don't think I could do that. And so the person that can do that and teach that, I think, is top rung. So good luck to your daughter in that.
I have convinced her not to go into emergency medicine, but you and I both agree that, medicine is like personality based. You got to go into what matches your like personality. For you, I would have seen you as either a sports medicine doctor or an orthopedic surgeon who mainly work with sports teams, because you just have that nutritional physiology sports mindset. You can tell us by how you look, by how you talk. A lot of people who listen probably have not seen you, but you don't look 60. You look about 48 years old. And then if they
I don't know about 48.
I'm honest. I mean that.
Yeah.
I mean that. And so you live it. And so I would highly encourage people. And the sequence of life I give to older people our age, doesn't matter your exercise regimen. It doesn't matter your weight now. If you're overweight, it's okay. It's okay. Start losing weight today. Let me give you an excuse of why you're overweight now. So most people put on about 1 to 1.5 pounds during the holidays. But you just think about a 1/10 an hour. In other words, if you put on a pound a year, that's it, just a pound a year. Imagine at 40, but then at 60, you put on 40 pounds. That's a lot of weight. And so, a pound a year, you really can't say that you were a glutton. So I would highly encourage people that wherever you are with your weight, just recognize, hey, I can take it off. And at this age, believe it or not, people say it's a little more difficult. It's actually a little easier. There's some simple things that we can do. One, the portion that I got people, such as not eating after 7 o'clock. If you start right now, say, hey, I'm not going to eat a thing after 7 o'clock moving forward. I will promise you, I would almost bet you, I'll bet you a cup of coffee that you'll start to lose weight. And then I would highly encourage people, you can go along with the American Heart Association. It says that we should work out about 150 minutes a day. So if you work out, 150 minutes a week. If you just work out 25 minutes a day, 5 days a week, you're going to start to lose weight. And the final thing, and I'm not moving towards no carbs, but studies are showing, Dr. Armstrong, that most of America's weight gain, or I'm not saying most, a lot of our American weight gain is tied to liquid sugars. These foo-foo drinks from some of these coffee shops, orange juice. People love to say, I don't drink soda, but I drink juice. Juice is full of carbs.
Yeah.
Soda's full of carbs. And so if you decrease your liquid carbs, and sometimes you got to cheat. I know they don't recommend diet drinks. I know they don't recommend it, but I got to admit, I'm a diet Sprite type of person. But if I drank regular Sprite, I promise you that I would put on weight. What's my point, everyone? Decrease your liquid carbs. If you do those 3 things, I promise you, over a period of time, you're going to lose weight. In other words, not eating after 7, starting to work out at least 25 minutes a day. And I would recommend you add 2 minutes to that every single day to about 50 minutes, and then decreasing your liquid carbs. Your weight is going to slowly come down, and it's not a diet. It's a lifestyle change. And so you're able to adapt this lifestyle and slowly bring your weight down.
And I think if you did the math on what you were talking about there, the calories that you would consume after 7 o'clock, but between 7 and bedtime, cutting out even just one sugary drink per day, and in increasing that physical activity, you're probably looking well above the 500 calorie deficit that you would need to lose about a pound a week.
I'm laughing because there's that PhD in exercise and physiology coming out. There you go, Dr. Armstrong. There you go. Good.
Well, I teach my students, it's all about the baby steps. What are the little things that you can do that have that cumulative effect? Um, when we moved to Oregon, I like beer. I don't like beer to get drunk. I like the taste of beer. And I found that my weight was kind of creeping up over the years here, partly because my activity level changed and, just enjoying when we go out a good, Northwest IPA. And so I knew I wanted to lose some weight. So I looked at, okay, well, where can I start immediately cutting calories? And so we looked at, okay, alcohol consumption. And my wife comes home with a 6-pack of Michelob Ultra for me from the grocery store. And I was like, I can't do this. I took one sip of it. And it's like, this is water. I might as well just drink water. And so we started looking at the calories in beer. And it occurred to me that if you look at the ABV in the beer, it can give you a good indication of how many calories are in that beer. And a lot of these beers that we're seeing in the craft industry now are very high ABV. When I grew up, in early college, most of the beers were like 3 to 4% alcohol. It was relatively low. Now you're seeing 7, 8, 9, 10% alcohol in these beers. And so we started doing the calculations and realized just kind of going by ABV, it was about 30 kilocalories per ABV for a 12-ounce beer. And it occurred to me that, well, most beers are served as a pint. So it's 40 calories per ABV. So if I just cut back one ABV in a beer and I have one beer a day, 360 days a year, how many calories is that? And it really begins to add up. And so we started looking at finding those lower kilocalorie beers that were going to put us in a sweet spot where we can enjoy what we liked without really without consuming a significant amount of calories. And those small little steps added up to a lot. And so you start looking at other things. Well, if I can walk just a quarter of a mile farther to work, I park my car just a quarter of a mile away from my office. That's a half a mile more a day. That's about 50 kilocalories. That adds up. And so you start looking at just these small little changes that we can make. And, it might just be, not putting butter on your bread every time you have a piece of bread, and so I like, what you're saying, those 3 basic principles can really help people get on track to losing weight.
Yeah. And it's funny that you mentioned that part about the alcohol. Well, you're right. Alcohol is full of carbs. You being an exercise physiologist, you're also aware of this point. So alcohol causes weight gains for 2 reasons. It's the carbs, but then alcohol retards an enzyme that helps you break down fat. In other words, it makes you less likely to start to break down fat just by drinking alcohol in and of itself. I have learned that if I drink alcohol, even if it's my light beer, because I had to adjust up to my light beers for the reason you just mentioned, even if I drink light beer, I've noticed that I put on weight if I drink it consistently. So if I drink light beer 5 nights straight, like when I was on vacation, I put on weight, no matter how much exercise that I did. It's all because of that enzyme. So I think you're right. Alcohol intake and exercising makes it makes a humongous difference. A humongous difference. You are absolutely right.
So I got a whole list of questions I was going to ask you, just kind of to keep to the sake of time, make sure that we can kind of respect your time and schedule for today. But any other lifestyle habits that we haven't talked about that you've kind of seen in your patients that you would not recommend for people who are trying to age well?
Yeah, I had a big one, but I lost it. And this is I'll also talk to parents about weed. Hey, this is my take on weed, and we're not a weed smoking family. But I guess I told my kids, it's been my experience that those people who I grew up with smoking weed chronically, they tend to fizzle out later in life. And I don't have the articles, but I recall, follow me. And actually, Dr. Armstrong, you will get this. A young person's mind is not fully developed until they're about 24, fully developed. And so when you start to inject weed at a very early age, you don't know what that's going to do to your mind. So if you get out of the politics and just stay in the science, again, my bias is I'm not a big weed person. But if you're going to do weed, I highly encourage you to wait till you're after 24 until your mind is fully developed. I'm also starting to find that a lot of young people, they're using weed as a way of coping. And the reason why that's a problem, and I know this is about getting older, but a lot of us old people have young kids or young adults. The reason why that's a problem is because if you use weed to like cope, you're not learning the lesson of whatever you're having to cope with. See, my pain or problems, that's an opportunity for you to learn and grow. Take that lesson, learn and grow. Don't rob yourself with smoking weed, but then you don't get to that lesson. And now you just got weed and it didn't help. Dr. Armstrong, pull me back in.
No, I like it. I don't need to pull you back in. I want to just keep fueling this conversation because I'm in the Pacific Northwest, and we have legalized it, and you can't turn a corner without seeing a weed store, and I think it has kind of created this air of safety around it for our young people, and they don't understand what you just said about the developing brain is going to be negatively impacted by this, and it is not something to really be toying with. And I have mixed feelings about it for medicinal purposes. I can look at the opioid crisis and how that has arisen, and how maybe certain prescriptive uses of marijuana might have alleviated some of that. But again, that's out of my realm, and I'm not a big pharmacological person. I prefer much more of, physician, heal thyself, like get your body in shape and mentally, physically, allow your immune system and your own mental capacities to help you kind of work through many of the diseases. But I wholeheartedly agree that, we got to be very careful in having a relaxed attitude toward marijuana and even alcohol for young people. So, yeah, if you want to age well, you got to start young. And how we learn to function as, in what we would consider like the first age and second age of life is going to have a significant impact on how we are getting into our third and fourth ages. And hopefully we learn well in the first and second ages. Our retirement years are the most prolonged, most enjoyable years of our life. And that fourth age, when we're in that final decline of life, is really a short period of time.
Oh, wow. That was good. And let me add this from the ER perspective. And this is about getting older, especially now we're at an age where our parents are getting older. And if there's any question I get from friends and people who know me, a lot of end of life questions, a lot of how to deal with end of life questions. And that's always a difficult subject. And for anyone who's lost some recently, I'm very sorry that you've had to go through that. But what we do know is that all of us are going to have to go through that. And so one thing that I've learned from being in the ER, I've really learned is from the ER. If you're fortunate enough that people who are older in life and they're still healthy, this is the time to get all the paperwork filled out. And let me just tell you, it's a difficult conversation. So don't say, "Oh, I don't want to do it because it's difficult." It's going to be difficult no matter what. Now, how healthy it is. Like Dr. Armstrong, I had to do my own for my trust, but myself. Well, it's difficult. That's for me.
Yeah.
So I say that to say, I know it's going to be difficult to have that conversation with your parent, your loved one, your spouse. But the reason I highlight that is it's better to have it now than during an acute phase, meaning that while the person's already sick and you're dealing with other stuff, and you've got to answer these questions. Do it now. I can just tell you, there's nothing I've learned more in the ER. Do it now. There have been so many times where you had a sick person who all of a sudden things went bad, and obviously when things go bad, they wind up in the ER. Now the person's on the vent, and you've got to explain to the family what's going on as the ER does. And then you get all these questions, and these questions are centered around end of life. What if the heart stops or the heart doesn't stop? Half the family wants this done, half the family wants that done. It becomes very, 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 very difficult. And I find that a lot of family quote drama happens right there at that moment. Whereas if that person had just taken time out and said, "This is what I want done, and this is the accountable person." In other words, "Doctor, I want you to talk to my brother. My brother has the final say so." That makes your life easier, and it makes your family's life easier as well. So I would highly encourage that. And then secondly, you talk about medicinal marijuana, and that's one level. But people often ask me about end of life medicine, end of life marijuana, end of life. Let me define that. That person probably has less than 2 or 3 months to live. End of life is different for me as a provider. Families often ask me about weed as an end of life. And by the way, nothing I say is medical advice. This is just my opinion. And I often say, hey, if they want weed, give them weed, because we're at the end of life. If they want opioid, give them opioid, because they're at the end of life. And before anyone misunderstands me, end of life, the decision tree is a lot different than someone who's going to be here much longer. Dr. Armstrong, did that make sense?
That makes absolute sense. And that's what we talk about in that fourth age, is that point of kind of no return, where your life is definitively declining, and it's just a matter of when, and you're trying to make those years as comfortable and as long as possible for that individual. And you're not doing harm to somebody whose body is already kind of in that decline. And so the key is to make them comfortable, to make those final years as enjoyable and as rewarding as possible. And so, yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with you. The rules change a lot as you get into that end of life period.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The rules change a lot. And then let me also add this example. There's been many times, Dr. Alex, I'm telling you many times, that I have a terminal patient, and because the hospital's filled, they're in the ER for a while, and their family's there next to them, and I'm having to manage the care while looking for a bed. This happened many times. And the person's quoting on their deathbed, they're literally on their deathbed, but they're just not dying. The family's next to them. The family leaves to go to lunch, and that person dies while they're going to lunch. That family member of the family leaves to make a phone call, and that person dies. What I've learned is happening is that the family never gave the patient permission to leave. The patient can see, oh, my loved one wants me to hold on for him. And that's why they wait until they leave and they pass away. Because I am of the opinion that often that person who's in front of you, when they're on their deathbed, they've already left. The spirit is already left. It's just that body there. And so if you give your loved one permission when you know it's the end, I think it makes their transition easier. I really think it makes their transition easier. Because I've also seen the example where the family's there and say, it's okay to go, Daddy. It's okay to go. And Daddy goes ahead and goes right there with the family there. And the reason why they were allowed to be there is because they gave him permission. He was free to go. And they were there, and they were able to be there with him. And again, there's a humongous spiritual part to medicine.
Yeah, that's very good advice. I really appreciate that. And it caused me to kind of reflect back to when my great aunt passed. So my dad's mom and father had already passed away. It was just him, his two sisters, and they had kind of begun to drift apart over the years. And my great aunt Gladys was on her deathbed, and they had given her permission to pass. I mean, we knew she was not going to get any better. She was just lying there in bed, and there were times I was in the room with them, and she would just breathe out, and you think, okay, this is it. She's passed. She's going to rest. And then she'd take a breath in, and this went on for like 2 weeks. And we're like, why won't she just, give it up and go? She's got to be in great pain. And over the course of that 2 weeks, I saw my dad and his sisters begin to kind of melt some of the ice between them, to begin to get along, laugh and joke again. And they got close again in that 2 weeks. And it seemed like by the point when they finally kind of all reconnected, she was like, okay, I can go. And she passed away.
Yes.
And it just, I feel like there's, in times there's pain and suffering happens for a reason, and we don't like to see it. But if we reflect back on it, it happened for a reason. And so there's so much we can kind of learn and experience in that end of life. And I don't know, went off on a little bit of tangent, almost the opposite of what you were talking
That was
about.
insane. That was
So we'll let them live. But yeah, so you probably have a ton of ER stories that you could tell about kind of end of life and the impact that it's had on people and their families and things like that.
Well, the story you just gave was an excellent story. And something that you said it like took me here. And depending on people's mindset, I do believe that everything that happens to you, or most things that happen to you, I mean everything, but a lot of people cannot, a lot of people don't. So everything that happens to you is for your good. It just may not be your immediate good. And so a good example with that would be, as Dr. Armstrong, you may not be able to pick up, but I'm a stutterer. I stuttered since I was growing up, since I was out the womb. In fact, it wasn't until I was 31 years old that I could speak a complete sentence without stuttering. And I thought it was the most horrible thing in the world. I wondered why God, I was young, so I would question God. Why would God give me such a thing? And so as I grew, I realized it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Let me tell you why. So growing up a stutterer, kids tease you, obviously. And so, and so it would make you not want to speak. Remember during third grade when we used to read out loud? We used to love to read out loud because you get to read until you mess up. So everyone was in a competition. For a stutter, it was horrible. So I get to the first or second word, and I would stutter. I would try to go to the bathroom, the nurse's office, and because every time I would stutter, the kids were going to tease me. The bullies were going to tease me. The bullies would want to fight me. So what it did is force me to, when I said something, I had to be short and succinct, because otherwise the bullies were going to tease me. And so as a result of developing short, succinct statements, it helped me develop my critical thinking skills. My short, succinct statements, critical thinking skills. Hence, it helped me get really good in math in my critical thinking skills. So therefore, because of critical thinking skills, I go on and I major in math. And not only that, I go on and major in math, I go on to become an emerging medicine physician. Short, succinct thoughts. I don't have to say as much. So with the stutterer, I wouldn't be where I am now. And so I say that until I say that everything that happens to us, it's for our good. This may not be our immediate good, and we may not be able to recognize it until we reach a certain spiritual level.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I've had, so many different friends and families that have experienced very horrific things. I've got a couple friends who lost children to brain cancer very early. And, they don't see how it has benefited anybody and how much pain it's caused for their families. But when I look from the outside into that, it's like that child has made me so much more of a person because, I've seen from them the ability to be able to laugh in such a very tragic situation. I've been able to see their strength, and it's given me strength. And it still sucks for that family. And I know it, for them, it's very hard to admit that this could be something good, or that any good could have come out of this. But, when we look at that bigger universal kind of interactions amongst us, we can see all that good that happens in us.
That was good. Yeah, good. Very good. Very good.
So anything else you'd like to add?
The last thing I would add, I think that what I've noticed in life is that what's most important is one thing we can all do is be kind to one another. Kindness is key. And in fact, I would ask, I have one favor of you and your listening audience, and that would be if everyone could carry cash with them. And the cash is not for you because most of us have credit cards and Cash App and PayPal. We have all those. The cash is for when we come across our brothers and sisters who are in need. Often they don't have Cash App. And so when you come across that person who needs an extra 20 or needs an extra 10, you need to have the cash to be able to help them out. And Dr. Armstrong, sometimes people get caught up in they're going to go buy alcohol, they're going to go buy drugs. That's none of our business. The point is they're asking for some help. And so if they're asking for help, we're not there to judge what they need help about. So if you can help them, I give them an extra 20, I give them an extra 10, then so be it. Just as a side note, by the way, alcoholics, when they don't get enough alcohol, they can die. So you could be saving their life by purposely fueling their alcohol. Well, that's not the point. The point is have some extra money to give because times are difficult for many of us. And so by having an extra 20 or an extra 30 to give to somebody, that's an act of kindness. And then number two, another act of kindness is just do something kind for somebody each day for someone you don't know. It can be something as simple as when you're in your coffee line, paying for the person's coffee behind you and leaving before they even know. These are not random acts of kindness that you want credit for. In fact, the goal is for the person not to know it's you. And I promise you this, when you do something kind for someone, you're going to get more of it than they do. You're going to feel so much better for the rest of your day. So I'm just asking people to be kind to other folks.
That is awesome advice. And I think that's not only going to help others age well, but it helps us to age well as well, because spiritually we're uplifted as well as uplifting the spirits of other people. And I had never thought about that in terms of carrying cash, because I don't carry cash. I've gotten so used to using a credit card. I typically will carry cash for tipping and that kind of stuff. When I go get a cup of coffee, I want to tip. And I feel bad when I don't have cash. And I was way too often caught off guard when somebody, is on the street and they ask for money and it's like, I don't have any cash on me. And you feel bad, but I've never really given it that thought that, who cares what they do with the money? That act of showing them respect and showing them that somebody cares is just enough to kind of lift them a little bit spiritually, that hopefully it's moving them away from that troubled position in life. So that's great advice.
And I've learned it from getting older, and actually it's my older patients in the ER. I recognized many years ago, a lot of my older patients needed help. And I can act like they don't need help, but when I have an older person in front of me and you can tell that they're living on the street or that they need help, I think it would be inhumane of me to wait for them to ask. So I've learned to always keep an extra 20 for me. And I frame it this way: hey, you mind doing me a favor? Let me just buy you lunch today. I know that you need more than lunch, that you need it for your groceries, but let you keep your humanity. And so, hey, let me buy you lunch. And so I said that as we get older, most of us who've gotten older, we have a lot more. I'm not saying that we're rich, but we have a lot more than what we did when we were young. And as a result of having more and being older, and thus the quote, the wise people within the world, we're also expected to set a certain bar. And that bar can be a bar of kindness, a bar of giving. And so, we are the examples. And so as you get older, we've got to give more. And you ready for this, Dr. Armstrong? Here we go. Oh, here we go. Not only do we have to give more, as we get older, we're going to need more too. So you're actually paying it forward.
Yeah. Very good advice. I feel like I should end on that because it's such a high note. But the one question I always ask of my guests when we do interviews is, what are you personally doing to age well?
Oh, that's a good one. I am doing two things. Exercise I'm just doing that. We've already talked about it. But meditation. Man, Dr. Armstrong, I can tell you that there's nothing better I've learned in the last 10 years, especially in the last 5, is meditation plays a humongous role. And let me leave your listening audience with these two things. If you want it to elevate your mindset, elevate your spirit, before you go to bed every night, when you get down and say your prayers, think about 5 things you're grateful for. 5 things. And they have to have happened in the last 24 hours. Think about them and then go to sleep. Because now you've gone to sleep on a positive note, and that's what your mind, while you're sleeping, is going to be reinforcing all that positive energy you have put in there. And then when you wake up in the morning, you think about another 5 things you're grateful for. It can be anything. It can be something that happened last year. It can be something that's going to happen. But start off your day of gratitude before you get out of bed. So ending your day of gratitude, waking up with that gratitude, I promise you, within a couple of days, you're like, why do I feel good? Because of how you're starting and beginning your day. I found that life-changing for me.
I like that. I am big on journaling in the morning. I don't often do it at night as much as I should. And I've kind of gotten away from that just because, you get busy, and we've talked about bedtime earlier, but I'm going to start doing that. I'm going to start, putting that into my gratitude with 2 T's routine is 5 things in the morning, 5 things in the evening to help me age well.
That's good. And Dr. Armstrong, it can be as simple as, one of my favorite is when I wake up and it's raining outside. I'm when I first read, I am so grateful I get to go downstairs and have my cup of coffee. I believe it or not, it feels good. And so it can, and just highlight it to tell people, it does not have to be major. Anything that makes you feel good, no matter how simple it is, works.
That is awesome. And I hope our listeners will take that advice and include that in their life because, again, gratitude is one of our big steps towards aging well. So, is there anything else you'd like to share? How can our listeners reach out to you, or where can they find you? I know you're on Instagram, you have your books. Where can they find their books? Anything you'd like to share with the audience so that they can connect with you on a little bit better level? And I also want to remind myself that we're going to ask about the link to finding your vitamin products as well.
Yes, they can connect with me. They can go to shieldvitamins.com. Again, shieldvitamins.com. We sell an immunity kit that has vitamin C, vitamin D, and an immunity blend as well. And by the way, if there's one vitamin, if I was stuck on a desert island and God gave me one supplement, he goes, you can only take one, it would be vitamin D. Here's why. It helps with our heart. It helps with our anxiety. It helps with our immunity, and it helps prevent cancer. Vitamin D is probably one of the most crucial supplements to make sure that you maintain a high level of. Now, most of our vitamin D comes from being exposed to the sun, 90%. However, the older you get, no matter what color you are, the less efficient your body gets at converting sunlight to vitamin D, because our skin goes through, as our skin ages, we become less efficient. And if you have any melanin in your skin, the less efficient you are at converting sunlight to like vitamin D. So eating foods that are rich in vitamin D, such as salmon, dairy products, fatty fish like mackerel, that's essential. And then also taking supplements. And at Shield Vitamins, we sell a vitamin D gummy supplement. In addition, unfortunately, and this is unfortunate for all of us, as you see in the news, there's been a surge in COVID, and studies are showing it's going to continue to increase. So I would highly encourage you all to go to Shield Vitamins. And just for more information, just on medical advice, you can follow me on Instagram at Dr. That's Dr. Geoffrey, Geoffrey MPH, Mary Paul Harry on Instagram. You can also follow me on Facebook at Geoffrey Mount Varner. Again, Geoffrey Mount Varner. And at least on my Instagram page at Dr. Geoffrey MPH, as you see a lot of life lessons coming through interactions with like my kids or things that happen while I'm running, just some several life lessons. And some of them are funny. Some of them are just real life. Because I know you all see me as Dr. Geoffrey, but I'm a real person with kids and who's getting older and dealing with what comes along with like getting older as well.
Now, one of the first videos where I kind of checked out your Instagram was you and your two kids. I don't know if it was in a Jeep or something like that. It seemed like it was a convertible, or maybe it was in a regular car, but just cranking up some country music song and singing along to it.
Oh, that was Father's Day.
Yeah.
That was Father's Day. Yeah. We were just come back from we went ski shooting, and we just coming back from there. Yeah, you watched that.
Yeah. So it's like this guy's living well. He's aging well. Your books are available on Amazon?
Yes, my books are available on Amazon. And if they reach out to you in your show, just let me know, and I will send them a free ebook. I will send them a free ebook of Training Your Mind for Split-Second Decisions. But most of all, Dr. Armstrong, thank you for what you do. I listened to a few of your shows. I think you need to add more of you and your exercise physiology in there. I really do.
I'll try and keep that in mind.
Even in your conversations with me, you were able to break it down into a layman level. So I think that people want to hear it. I think that coming from Dr. Armstrong carries a lot of weight.
Well, thank you. And I'll try and keep up on that. I know I have one friend, Sandy Griffin, who has been on the podcast a couple of times. She's a personal trainer, bodybuilder and stuff. And she said, one of the things I like about you is you just cut the bullshit, and that's kind of the approach I like to take. There's just so much out there in fitness that is nonsense and not helpful at all. And if we just keep to the simple things, we're going to age much more effectively and much better. So
speaking of, I know it's your show, but let me ask you a question though. Speaking of cutting the bullshit, and it's okay if you disagree with me. I'm okay with that. But what I'm finding is that a lot of people have bought into this concept of their overweightness is because they've got some medical condition. And in my mind, I'm thinking, no, it's because you eat too much. It's like, to me, hold on. The calculation has not changed no matter what the science is. The calculation is, and you can break it down in more simple terms, is the calories you put in must be, must be less than the calories you put out in order for you to maintain your weight. Has that calculation changed?
No, not at all. I mean, that's when I teach weight loss. I generally teach that about 50% of successful weight loss is just simply caloric balance, calories in, calories out. In fact, when I teach, a diet, your diet is what you eat on a regular basis. You can eat Mediterranean, you can eat McDonald's, whatever you're eating, as long as your calories are in balance, you're not going to gain any weight. If you need to lose weight, decrease your calories and you're going to lose weight. There was the doctor from, I believe it was Kansas or Kansas State, that did a 30-day study on himself where he ate nothing but Twinkies and junk food and actually lost weight, improved his blood chemistries and all that just by simply reducing his caloric intake. And then the next step is to start looking at your macros. What am I taking in carbohydrate, protein, and fat balance? And then a smaller percentage, like about 10%, is the quality of the foods that we eat. And then that last 5% are, nutrient timing and the supplements that we might take. A lot of people go right to, I got to take something that's going to decrease my appetite so that I can lose weight. It's like, no, just start moving, start eating better, eat a little bit less, and you're going to make some significant gains. And I think we are overly focused on fat loss being to get to those six-pack abs. And I don't think that's a healthy approach. I think, it can look great. And if you genetically have that predisposition, great, but the reality is we talked prior to the recording that we both wrestled in high school. And I always kind of tell my students, if I'm looking for somebody to get my back in a situation where it might come to fisticuffs, I'm looking for the guy with the cauliflowered ears and the thick neck, not the guy with the six-pack abs, because that's the guy that's going to be able to stick up for me. But we've gotten this unhealthy approach to being overly lean. And on the other hand, we also have allowed people to justify their obesity and be content with it despite the tremendous costs that it has for us medically. The healthcare costs would decrease significantly if we would just get everybody to lose 10 pounds on the average. And so genetically, you might have a little bit harder struggle in maintaining a healthy body composition, or you might have a little bit more of what I call Dunlap's disease, where your belly Dunlap over your belt. But that point where you're kind of exceeding your weight, your waist is exceeding your belt size, you're starting to get into an unhealthy level. That's where we're starting to look at metabolic syndrome and those types of things. And so I do believe it's not a genetic thing. It's not something that we should accept. We shouldn't demoralize people for being overweight. We should be supportive and helping them to find ways to maintain healthy body weight. But we got to get to that point where we start understanding that it is not something to be excused. It's something that we need to focus on, trying to make healthier choices that are going to bring us to a healthier body composition. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
it did. That was very good. But I was going to make one other point. You mentioned abdominal fat. So for your listeners who are getting older, and the men, and for the older women who have husbands who are listening, keep in mind that abdominal fat for men causes a decrease in libido. Abdominal fat in men causes an increase in libido. The study was done about 10 years ago. This is versus waist fat or leg fat. Because you're and you know this better than I do, Dr. Armstrong, because it's shown that the abdomen basically functions as an endocrine organ. If you have a lot of fat there, you produce a lot of estrogen, and that estrogen turns out it decreases your libido. So women, if you want your husband's libido to increase, husbands, if you want your libido to increase, simply decreasing your abdominal fat will help that greatly. Again, it's mainly the abdominal fat area, and we can get into the pathophysiology about why that area, but the end result of that study was decreasing the abdominal fat helps increase your libido.
And that's primarily visceral fat, right? So in and around the organs as opposed to subcutaneous fat in the waist.
Yes.
Yeah. So oftentimes, we just kind of focus on that the surface fat, but we don't really focus in on that abdominal fat. And there's a lot of relatively lean-looking men that have a lot of visceral fat and are just able to hide it because they don't store their fat on the surface. And if your waist is bulging, whether it looks lean or not, you're in that situation.
Good point. Drop the mic on that one. Excellent point.
Remember the Iron Sheik from the back that one day, it would have been the WWF.
Yes.
Yeah. I remember that guy having this big belly on him, but he had like 6-pack abs. It's like, how is that?
I didn't understand it either.
And it was pre-growth hormone. So we know it wasn't because of the growth hormone. It was just, he naturally stored all his fat internally and not healthy at all. And I'm quite the opposite. When I lose my weight, I lose a lot of visceral fat very quickly, but I can never seem to lose all of that surface fat. So I can look very lean in clothing, but I take my shirt off, you can tell there's a little bit of pudge there, but the waist size gets a lot smaller and I know it's healthier for me. So
I'm the same way. Yeah, I'm the same way. And every so often the ego side, I'm like, well, I wish I could just turn this into a 6-pack. But I know that because the visceral fat that I don't have, that's the most important part.
Yeah. And just consider it a 6-pack in a soft cooler.
That was good.
All right. Well, it was a pleasure interviewing you today, and we might have to have you on again because I think you are a wealth of information. And when I first kind of you approached about being on the podcast, and I kind of looked at some of your videos and stuff, and I came across you talking about having a stutter. It's like, no way, this guy is just so eloquent and just so lively in his speech. There's no way he had a stutter. But thanks for sharing that. And I think again that underscored that whole split-second decision-making process and how that can help overcome even something like a stutter.
Absolutely. I like it. And thank you for having me on your show as well. And I definitely look forward to coming back.
All right. Well, you enjoy. Again, thank you for your time. And as I'll end, just keep aging well.
You too. Thank you very much.
Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well. If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers.